Panzironi. Today we are going to talk for in-depth scientific study about a problem that is not very serious, fortunately. However, at the aesthetic level, in short, it bothers many people. I'm talking about pendulous fibroids. So I would say right away, let's introduce them with this video. Let's see it.
Pendulous fibroids are skin outgrowths. So of our skin, they originate from the layer under the epidermis, which is the dermis. At first, they are small in size. However, over time, under the weight of gravity, they curve. That is, they become just hanging. Hence the term pendulous fibroids. So, habitually, pendulous fibroids are found at the level of the armpits, at the level of the groin, at the level of the neck, and also at the level of the upper eyelid.
Here's Panzironi. Dr. Renato Gambino explained to us that pendulous fibroids are skin growths that then, under the effect of gravity, obviously curve and become pendulous.
Well, I can tell you this statement makes me smile a little bit because gravity has absolutely nothing to do with pendulous fibroids. If anything, these fibroids, as long as they remain small, obviously remain adherent to the skin. But as they grow, since they are not made up of a fibrous tissue, they tend to hang naturally from the skin.
Again, Dr. Gambino told us that they form mostly in the armpits, eyelids, neck, and groin. Why do they form in those particular places?
We will also explain it later. Actually, they are those tissues that tend to undergo rubbing, so they arise on the neck just because of the presence. In short, the contact between the clothes and the neck, they occur under the armpits because clearly we move the arms, or in the part, let's say so, of the legs, inner part, because especially in obese people, there is more rubbing. And then they can appear, as the video said, also in the upper parts because it is the eye tissue that is always moving.
Then I would say let's go and see what are the treatment protocols from medicine just for pendulous fibroids. Let's see it in this video.
I want to emphasize that pendulous fibroids are tumors, but they are extremely benign tumors. Absolutely, there is no progression to neoplasia. Removal, obviously, as there are different removal therapies, there is cryotherapeutic exeresis with liquid nitrogen, where the fibroid is frozen. I personally use programmed superpulsed diathermocoagulation, and it is nothing but a micro burning. And basically, within 10 seconds, I already removed the fibroid.
Here, Dr. Gambino told us that basically the only way to eliminate, to cure these pendulous fibroids is just elimination. And so he also said various types.
Yes, this is certainly true because unlike cysts that can be reabsorbed, once we have an uncontrolled growth of a tissue such as skin, this clearly cannot enrich. But I must also say that I would expect from a doctor who should treat his patients also an attitude towards prevention. So maybe explain to the patient what are the causes that induce the appearance of these fibroids so that we will be able sooner or later to have a medicine of before and not always, as it happens, the usual of after.
Mr. Panzironi, you are right. And also, in my opinion, most probably medicine is still far from understanding what the causes are. But let's go and see in this video what they think are the causes. Let's see.
For so many skin neoformations, even today, there is no single unanimously recognized cause. We talk about hypotheses. Given the location of these neoformations, it is thought that one of the hypotheses is rubbing. Speaking of chafing, I would also mention the obese. In the obese, this chafing is accentuated because there are several areas where the skin folds that form because of obesity create all those special conditions to the formation of these pendulous fibroids.
So Panzironi, again, Dr. Gambino told us very candidly, I would also say sincerely that medicine still has not understood what the causes of pendulous fibroids are. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can say that this is the classic example of that dogmatic medicine full of rules that actually does not take into consideration at all what happens instead to that noble medicine that I call that of the researchers, because there are so many scientific studies that confirm and explain the causes that induce the appearance of pendulous fibroids, but official medicine does not take this information into consideration and therefore is also unable to create treatment protocols that can be beneficial to people's health.
However, Mr. Panzironi, although they did not find the cause, they did, however, find a connection between skin rubbing that occurs more in obese people and the appearance of fibroids.
This is an observational truth, that is, it has been seen obviously for so many years that there has been an appearance of fibroids where we have chafing. However, this is the classic straw that breaks the camel's back. We have to ask ourselves, how is it that the stimulated tissue begins to produce these pendulous fibroids? Actually, scientists tell us very clearly that this is essentially due to the overexpression of a hormone, leptin, which has the ability precisely to cause duplication and therefore has a mitogenic effect towards the keratinocytes and the cells of the epidermis. And therefore, this, at the time when we have damage to the epidermis and therefore we have inflammation, this can lead from a reconstruction phase that basically gets out of control and you start to form these pendulous fibroids.
You mentioned leptin, but what does this excess leptin depend on?
Essentially, it depends, of course, on our diet. We have explained it very often that when we eat those classic foods of the Mediterranean diet, so bread, pasta, pizza, potatoes, rice, and legumes, we actually activate a hormone called insulin. Insulin, in order to lower our blood sugar, induces adipocyte cells to assimilate sugar, blood glucose, to turn it into triglycerides, and doing so in such a violent way leads to an overexpression of leptin production by adipocytes. We have already verified in a great many studies that obese people, so people who have excessive insulin production, also have leptinoresistance. That is, there are receptors that no longer read leptin clearly, and this leads to more and more leptin in the blood. And this reasons in people who are well disposed, obviously, the appearance, as we said, precisely the appearance of pendulous fibroids.
Thank you, Panzironi. Thank you for your explanations. The time has come to bring in a guest, a witness who has had this very type of pathology. So from Vignola, the city of cherries, Mr. Emanuele Modena. Mr. Modena, please have a seat. So, Mr. Modena, I know that you had been suffering in the appearance of pendulous fibroids for several years. First of all, when did you see the first fibroids appear?
At the age of about 20 years old.
At the age of 20. In what parts of the body?
But especially under the armpits, around the neck, and in the groin.
Did you ever calculate more or less, in short, at the same time, how many fibroids did you have on your body?
Thus counting them about 50 between small and large, which then even the small ones would get big. Were increasing in volume.
So they were also increasing in volume. Roughly, can you quantify how wide they were?
Millimeter to centimeter, yes, in length.
What kind of annoyances, because we said they are more cosmetic, these issues, however, then they give real annoyances?
Annoyances, because with the heat, with the rubbing, they would get irritated, and you always had to give some cream anyway to solve the burning problem, because they would get irritated, and then afterwards they would also hurt, among other things.
But it is true that when you scratched, sometimes they would break, and you would see them grow even more.
Grew even more, increased in volume. After they had broken them practically, even I would even go and tie them at times to make them disappear. Tie them
up
thread.
In what sense? To throttle them.
To throttle them. Then, of course, the problem would recur, because from the moment it was dropped, it would come back to form.
The problem would reappear. Look, can I ask you, every year, roughly, how many new fibroids did you see appearing?
Every year, about 10 to 15.
10 to 15. So at this point, I want to ask you, in all these years, surely you must have gone to a dermatologist and started to remove it.
I started to remove, and slowly, with several sessions, I was able to remove the bigger ones, the more troublesome ones.
What kind of excision did you use?
They used cryotherapy. They would freeze them
Liquid
and they
nitrogen.
would dry, make a scab, fall off and go. However, either on the side or on the back or on top, they would always reform.
So it was a continuum. Then at some point, you know, life 120, when and how?
I met him on the month of February 2018, on the 7th of February, watching Adriano's broadcast that I immediately gave relative weight to. Then after his insistence with these broadcasts, he put me in a position to follow him more. And in one evening, he said, try to believe. And so in addition to the various other pathologies I had, I decided to try.
Have you decided to try? So you told me it was February 2018, so it's about 14 months now that you've been doing this lifestyle. Have you noticed anything different in the progression of your pendulous fibroids?
In the progression of the ones that I took out, they haven't presented anymore. And let's say that my aesthetic body is very, very improved.
You told us that basically the ones that you didn't remove, though, what do? Do they stay the same?
They remain the same. In fact, I would say they are actually fading. So they are regressing, they regress.
So I thank the gentleman, Emanuele Modena.